Clarence resident, board member of our Historical Society in the 1970s, familiar, probably as familiar with Clarence history as our original historian, Onita Baker, who was the Clarence historian for many years and published a book on the history of Clarence. Just basically a person, I know I'm excited to learn from the master, the man who was chinking the log cabin here in town with the original solution, which was used to keep that barn, that log cabin, sturdy for many years. The Landau log cabin, right here in our park. This man has contributed a lot, too much that we can even discuss here to the town of Clarence. And so I welcome John Conlon.
Thank you, Tom. And that was kind of a nice introduction. It's like a homecoming for me to come back to Clarence, having been here since the 1950s on and off. And now I'm living in my parents' home where I was born in 1939. And I'm probably the only person in Buffalo that's this old, still living in the same place where he was born, although I wasn't there my whole life. I'm there now. It's really fun to see so many familiar faces. Gratifying that you came out on this cold night. This is a really cold night. Carol picked the coldest one she could get. I did write a lot of articles in the Western New York Heritage magazine, which I tried to put on solid feet, and I think I have, because it's continued on without me. That's really the measure of whether you got anything done, if you can continue on just as well without you, rather than deflating like a bad souffle. And Western New York Heritage, a quarterly history magazine, it goes on. It came to be because it was called the Buffalo and Erie County Historical Society stopped publishing their quarterly publication of the Niagara Frontier. It was where they put the findings, the ongoing research in local history. And when they stopped doing that sometime in the 70s, my friend Austin Fox started writing an article on architecture in the Buffalo Spree magazine. So for 18 years, he had done that, wrote those articles. And in 1996, he asked me if I would continue it. He says, I'm getting too old, and John, you're my pick. And I said, have you told the publisher? And he said, whoever I pick is going to be it. So I said yes to Austin, and I did about 9 or 10 articles after that before I went to my own magazine. Unfortunately, before I got my first article out, Austin had died. And so my first article was a eulogy to all the contributions that Austin Fox had made over a long career to Buffalo and Erie County history. But the article that I really wanted to be my first was my second. And that was the article about the Lapp farmstead. Because to me, this was the most important thing that I could think of to start writing these articles, because it was a story that just demanded to be told. It demanded attention. And so I see there's some copies of it. It has stood a test of time pretty well since 1997. How long is that? That's another 18 years or so. But I read it over only a couple of weeks ago in preparation for coming here. And I thought, if I don't say so myself, it's a darn good article. I don't think I could do that good again. It's a distillation of information. You know, kind of like Tullamore Dew was triple distilled. And I liked it when I read it over. So, the story that's most important, and therefore now that I've done all this to just establish my credibility, I'm going to read one quote from myself, because if you establish your credibility, you can quote from yourself. That's the real bonus, the perk. One of the most historically valuable and architecturally significant farms in western New York. That's what this last Regal farm is. So I'm going to show you what I call aids to understanding. These are slides, but the slides, they don't speak for themselves. I have to speak for them. So I will start that. May. So, all of you who know history know that the Evans House was built in 1801. It was on Main Street in Williamsville. It was a two-story log house. And Joseph Ellicott had a friend of his from Pennsylvania German territory, a man named Thompson, who worked for him. He built this house. And the Evans House lasted until 1950s, when it was unceremoniously just bulldozed down. It had been moved off its original site, but it had survived until the mid-1950s. And in 1875, Erie County historian Frisco Johnson said, "The venerable old brown Evans House looked older than it was, but it was the oldest and most venerable house in existence at that time on the Holland Land campus." We're going to come back to the Evans House, but right now I just wanted to remind you what it was. Joseph Ellicott was a little bit frustrated by the fact that as he was trying to bring people into the Holland Land purchase in 1801 or early 1800s, there were Pennsylvania German, what we call, sometimes referred to as Pennsylvania Dutch, but we know they're Pennsylvania Germans. They were going to Ontario, and they have been going to Ontario, migrating from Pennsylvania to Ontario since the Revolutionary War. They were given land as loyalists in the Revolutionary War by the British government. And they were still coming here in 1801 and 1810 and all the way up to the War of 1812. It was after the War of 1812 that they started coming into one part of Western New York, and it's basically Clarence. They didn't go all over Western New York. They didn't build all over Western New York. They built in Clarence, Lancaster, and Newstead, but the nucleus was Clarence. And they came here because it was a land that they liked. Limestone, shade, bark, hickory, other hardwoods. That was the land that they liked to farm. But Joseph Ellicott mentioned one time that there were 16 Conestoga wagons lined up around the time that the Evans House was built, 1801, waiting to cross the ferry, across the Niagara River, to get into Ontario to join other Pennsylvania Germans that were there. So Clarence is the only place where they settled, where this ethnic group settled, other than Ontario. You go to Ontario, And there's a Black Creek Village near Toronto. They have a Pennsylvania German log barn restored, available. They have a Conestoga wagon. Of course, Conestoga wagon was a perfected type of a wagon that was just theirs. And it was used for hauling freight. They used it when they migrated, but mainly used for hauling freight. It was displaced by the Erie Canal. Before the Erie Canal, Conestoga wagons went back and forth between Erie County and Albany in regular routes as freight carriers. I'm probably getting off the mark here. What I want to make a point of is there are restored bare farms and there are restored farmhouses. And if you go to Mumford, Genesee Country Village, you might see a Conestoga wagon. It's there as a curiosity piece because there's no Pennsylvania German heritage that's celebrated in Mumford because they didn't have any in Genesee County. They did not have that heritage. Okay, only Clarence and the areas near Clarence that it overflowed to has this ethnic history. We'll get to the next slide. This is Doris Grace's house, David Grace's house. David who gave us these wonderful chandeliers as one of his great contributions to this building. The building is very old. It's not Pennsylvania German. It's New England. New England buildings generally were symmetrical. So this has 5 bays. It's the two-story, a window over a window. That's called in architecture a bay. So this house has 5 bays. The middle bay with a window over it is a door. That centrally symmetrical design is a New England characteristic. And this was built by a New Englander. And of course, you all know this is my candidate. At least, it's the only possible, it's a contemporary of the Asa Ransom Tavern, if it's not the same building. So, and that was even older than the Evans house. This is maybe, it's before 1810. I can bet on that before I've looked at it in detail. So why am I showing you this? This is a 2-story log building. The Evans house is a 2-story log building. Now, we haven't seen the logs, but when Mr. and Mrs. Regal, the elderly couple that I talked to in 1978, I asked them if this was a log house. They said, yes, it was always a log house. It's a 2-story log house. Now, I have not seen the logs, and maybe nobody else has, but I have no reason, thank you very much, Bill. I have no reason to doubt that people who restored this house to a living quarters in the 1920s could make a mistake and say it was log when it was not. So I'm assuming, until it's proven to me otherwise, that this house that on the left farm, that is certainly not a post-and-beam house and has very thick walls, is a log building between the inside and the outside finishes, which would make it a much more important building than if it were not one.
My father said the same. He's Marguerite William Regal's sister.
Oh.
So it is a log house.
A log house. Now, just because in some places there is a hole that's been put through the wall and there were no logs, that doesn't mean it's not a log house. We don't know how many holes or windows might have been there that were closed up, and my feeling is this is definitely a log house based on those reasons. That makes it an extraordinary piece of domestic architecture, even though it's been totally restored on the inside. I mean, it looks like a house that was done over in the 1920s. They did a thorough job of it. Okay, I want to show you, this is a 4-bay house. I've just explained to you what bays mean. This is the Van Tyne house at the crossroads of Clarence Center before it had fire. The fire destroyed most of it. It was, fortunately, it was rebuilt. And, but the entire second story was burned. But this, the mid-1820s is a Pennsylvania German 4-bay asymmetrical 2-story house. There are a couple of these left. There are a number of them left. A lot of them are in the skies. But they are part of this Pennsylvania German heritage of Clarence. This house is not in Clarence. It's on Main Street, Main and Bailey, in the Grover Cleveland Golf Course. This house was built around 1920, between 1920 and 1922. Every once in a while, the historians do that. 1820, 1822. It's a stone version of the same type of house, although you can't see it so clearly. Never been successful in getting this highlighted as a piece of history. Now, also in Clarence, the mostly Mennonite Pennsylvania Germans built churches and schools. This building that still exists at the corner of Winding Lane that used to be Stricker and Main Street is the Glencroft Copper Shop. And you can still see this building there. A little bit later version of the same kind of Mennonite stone Pennsylvania German architecture is the 1834 church in Williamsville on Main Street that's been converted to a bank. Now, as far as a farmstead goes, the Abraham Martin farmstead is a very important farmstead too, with a Pennsylvania German. So that's on Clarence Center Road. The barn, I think it's still owned by the Benz family, has the characteristic Pennsylvania German bank barn. This is a cantilevered 4-bay bank barn, a type that was perfected by the Pennsylvania Germans, that was really a machine for farming, a perfected design. It's called a bank barn because there's a bank that goes up to it, and it's built into the natural contour of the land. It's built into the side of the hill. And on the other side, it's Frank Lloyd Wright's favorite architectural structural feature. It's cantilever. It hangs out over and it's unsupported. I'm going to show you one that may not exist anymore. Some of you may know this is on Heisey Road. At one time I went around and I looked at every barn in Clarence and I classified them. And people thought, well, why are you doing that? I said, well, I'm the only person I know who can look at a barn and date it within 5 years of plus or minus when it was built. Because it's easier to date houses that have moldings and all kinds of features that are dateable. But you don't find any moldings in barns. Okay, this, I believe, still exists on Hare Road, and it was converted to other uses. I think living quarters have been built on the side of it. Is that right, Linda?
Yeah, it's made into an apartment.
Yeah. But we were looking at the cantilevered side. And this barn existed until a few years ago on Strickler Road in the Jurek tree farm. And I never got to see the inside of this because Mr. Jurek chased me away. Mr. Jurek didn't put up with any nonsense. And he thought surely I was nonsense. This, I don't remember where it was. I think it's in Newstead, just across the line, and it's just a good image of the cantilever of Pennsylvania German barn. Now, the largest of all those barns was probably built around 1850 in Lancaster, but the part of Lancaster that was once part of Clarence, by the way. And this is the house on Genesee Street near Pavement Road that's illustrated to the right. The house still exists. The barn, the largest of the Pennsylvania German bank barns, no longer exists. It fell apart in 1985. And it, with its additions, was 90 feet by 90 feet. And now it no longer exists. That just happened to be a piece of the structure that after it collapsed. Okay, so now we get to the lap barn. I've always called it the Regal barn, but it is the lap barn. But the Regals were people that I knew. It was mentioned that it's kind of on Griner Road, but it's not on Griner Road. It's reached from Griner Road. It's on its own road. What's so great about this farmstead complex is that it addresses the natural contour of the landscape. It's part of the landscape. The landscape is fairly flat, but there's a creek that runs through it. And the buildings are located relative to the creek. They're not relative, not relating themselves to any man-made arbitrary line such as Griner Road. This is related to nature. So this is the entrance, and it's the barn way over there, and where you see a couple pine trees. The house has been hiding behind pine trees for a long time. This is straight on before you turn to cross over toward the barn. It's a heck of a place to plow in the winter time, just to get to the front door. So on this one, I've captured the creek and the barn and the house. The house, as I say, is kind of disguised in trees. Now, when I first went there, Diane Baker made the introductions, and she arranged for me to see this. And this was the most productive. This was such a beautiful farm to see. What you're looking at is two very large corn cribs full of corn. Inside, I saw these enormous hay mows up to the rafters, up to the log rafters in the ceiling. And this is a big barn. Of course, the only barn that has a 3-story chicken coop. But it also had the granary. A granary, and in these bins, it was full of grain. Barley, wheat, oats, and one was full of wool. And Mr. Regal said, "You want to touch that wool, you can feel the lanolin. You can't wash that off." I felt the lanolin and I smelled it for a week. But this was a very productive farm. They had sheep, and I was able to glimpse it, in what I call its glory.
John, what year was that?
This is, I believe, 1978, and that's Diane Baker, and that's her car at the time when I first visited the house. So we're looking at the house from the back. An old picture of the barn. The bank, of course, is embellished. It's a natural contour, but it's embellished. So all of the animals stay on the lower level, on the ground level, and the earthen bank keeps it warm, around that stone, keeps it warm in the winter. And the other thing that keeps it almost impenetrably warm is the hay mound above. So basically, inside the underneath part of this barn, it's like going down into the earth. I mean, probably about 58 degrees, very constant, at least at the back end of this barn. You know, you go down in the subway in Buffalo, it's always 58, 59 degrees deep underground. It's never too cold. Another old picture of the side of it, I was just trying to show the cantilever at the left. This is on the south end of the barn. All these windows, openings in that end of the barn are for the three-story, at one time it was a three-story chicken coop. I think it was one of the most productive crops that the barn produced, really, was eggs. Now it looks like there's a post supporting the corner. Maybe somebody thought it was needed, but it wasn't needed. And Dr. Halleck has repaired that corner as well as put a new metal roof on this barn. He's done a lot of improvements. So we look at the overhang. These are various openings, stall openings for whatever animals they would be. It could be cows, horses, sheep, goats. This is a hand-wrought pinto hinge that was probably there from the beginning.
John, what was the purpose of the overhang? To keep something,
The purpose of the overhang is that it's sheltered. It shelters the openings that the animals can, like the horses or cows could have their head out and it wouldn't be on top of them. But it's a protection for the weather. And now on the inside, I took this just one or two shots. Now, I have to say, I have spent a lot of time with barns. I have taken barns down and put barns back. I have restored the oldest barn in Erie County, which is opposite the Hamburg Fairgrounds, built in 1810, formed over 1812. It has a chestnut frame, 15 inches square blue frame. So when I looked at this, I saw something that I had never seen before. And that is what is essentially a double tie beam. The frames would have a tie beam on top, but the rail just below the tie beam in this barn is almost continuous, and it's braced. So this is a very large barn and a very well-built barn. It was built by people who knew what they were doing, who had done this before. And the remarkable thing I forgot, usually I remember these numbers, but I forgot the length of the barn. It's more than 60 feet long, lengthwise. And all of the roof members, the plate and purlins that go from one end to the other are single pieces of wood. They are from a single tree. That means that if they ended up with a 65-foot long piece, this tree must have been a 90-foot tree. The trees, hardwood trees that were growing on this land were harvested and put into these buildings. And as people who know the shagbark hickory locally, it goes very straight and it's not big at the base. It goes straight along. And I would bet that some of those long pieces are hickory. Just another shot looking, that's actually looking the other way from the first shot, but I've got some. And I'm glad I snapped this one shot. It's the only shot I have, probably the only picture that was ever taken of this granary bin. There were 8 bins, and just full to the top of grain. I believe this is wheat. And Mr. Regal was very proud to show. I mean, I thought I'd be asked to see this, and maybe I was imposing. No, he was very proud of it, and well, he should have been. Okay, the house and the barn are almost equally important to my mind as an architectural historian, and important from a design standpoint. But remember, the whole complex is a design. It's a natural design fitted to the landscape. That incinerator still exists, although I seem to remember that there was a small smokehouse that was in bad repair. It's no longer evident. Unless this was actually part of it and the structure had fallen down. This is how I saw the house at first. And of course, the front door has long since not been a used door because all the activity is toward the farm and the barn and the pathways. But I want you to see this. So I measured this door. It's almost square. It's 28 feet by 32 feet. Now, we do not know much about the hollowed Evans house of 1801. But we do know that it was 28 feet by 32 feet, the exact measurements of this house. And we also know that this is the Pennsylvania German 4-bay asymmetrical entrance, the same as the Evans house was. And so I was really intrigued when I found out that Mr. Thompson, hired by Joseph Ellicott to build a house on Main Street in Williamsville, was from the same county as the Lapps, from Chester County, Pennsylvania. So I assume from that evidence that this was a long-time traditional type of building that builders in Chester County, Pennsylvania built. He came here and he built one, and the Lapp family came and they built another one. And I'll bet if we go to Chester County, Pennsylvania, we'll still be able to find the prototype of this house. So there's one of the few shots of the Evans house. People a long time, they thought the addition, that must have been the wrong house because they couldn't think of a 2-story building being built of logs. And of course, it was always covered with clapboards, just probably like the Lapp house. So I went through a lot of research to find the same view, a picture of the same view of the Lapp Regal farmhouse as the Evans house, just to say, this is overwhelming information to me And that's why I say this is a story that demands to be told. And the fact is, now that I've told you, it's your burden. Because just to acknowledge the importance of this complex is to feel the burden that something must be done to preserve it or to highlight it. And at the same time as you recognize, oh, it's really lucky that this has survived. I mean, this is only really survived by the caring owners and circumstance. I mean, there is development on all sides of this building, very nice design, but undistinguished architecture all around it. But we're lucky. This has survived. We're lucky. This is an opportunity to recognize it. I worked on a Great Brook. When Frank Lloyd Wright has a house, Great Brook, on the lake. And the owners wanted to sell it for $400,000. And a group of people got together and they worked at it. And it seemed like an impossible task. We who are working on it thought this is really an impossible task, but it demands attention, it demands our work. Well, Great Brook is now in multi-million-dollar restoration. It is drawing visitors from all over the country. It's a great success, but it looked impossible. Another thing that looked impossible was never going to happen was downtown canal side development. There was a lot of voices crying in the wilderness for about 15 years before something actually has happened there, using a little bit of the history. So I'm saying, yes, it's a daunting thing to try to put this farmstead to somehow a public or community use. But it's not only worth doing, it demands it of its own existence. So this is my last slide. I do have some images that I took in December visiting with Carol, just for some up-to-date views. So Jonathan, maybe you can show them. Just look. The trouble with these things is they're too much. With an old slide, and Nancy, a slide projector, I don't know how to do the PowerPoint. I figured at this point I'm not going to learn. But Jonathan has gone here. He set this up. These are not in a presentational sequence, but this is the way the barn looks now. It has a new roof. The most important improvement that could be done to any barn is to put a weatherproof roof on it, and Dr. Halleck has done that. And he's repaired masonry at the base, and in the time he has had it, certain functional additions have seemed to fall apart, but it's not really a loss. The barn itself is the major structure.
John,
Yes.
who owns it now?
His name is Dr. Halleck. Is that right?
Yes,
Yeah.
this went now.
Yeah, I met him in December. Very interesting guy. This is in the interior, just looking up. No, this is not. What this is, I couldn't find one shot I had. Over the years, various people who worked there had put their names in. And there's a date of 1840 and some other illegible ones, and the name Crabio and Kalkenberg are there because, of course, they were probably there helping in the harvest, and they changed their name. Their names are in the wood, but it's not really legible in this view. That's Carol and Dr. Halleck at the south rear corner of the farm. But I didn't take this picture to show them. I took this picture to show the flattened, these are actually, hey, I got this thing. Where is it?
You just heard that.
What?
If you just press this, this little green button.
That's one of those green ones. Okay. I wanted to show you these logs flattened on each side. And they're raw logs, and they're about 14 inches wide. And we're looking at, original structure.
Look all main view.
Yes. Some little hanger for tack or horse collar or whatever built into the wall. And this is probably built into the wall from the first because they knew what this was going to be used for. They don't know if it's a dove coat or if it's a glove box or what. It's built into the wall, and I'm sure there was many eggs were laid in there. But, excuse me? Oh, okay. I'm sorry, at my age, I sympathize with that request. Again, this is as it is now. The cantilever is not as deep. Yeah, you can turn that on. The cantilever is not as deep as it is on Metz's Abraham Martin card, but it serves the same purpose. Going around the corner, and now we're going to go inside. This is looking to the north end. The hay mow then would go all the way up to the peak. On the left there is a structure, and above that would be a straw log. Or I don't have these in a chosen sequence, so maybe I'll come back to it. Okay, we are looking. We're looking toward the granary. Okay, this is the granary. In behind there were those bins, and the bins still exist. And they would start, they put one board, fill it up, put another board, and kept sliding in boards until the grain got to the top. And most of those boards are still there now.
That's a good shot.
The rafters are small logs. This is one of the grain bins as it is now. Of course, the way this barn was used as a machine, there's a loft on each side for storing hay, and in the middle is a threshing floor. And that's where the farmers would thresh the grain. They would then separate, the grain from the chaff and keep the straw for further use. That's the granary in the corner of the barn. Anyway, what these pictures say is it's a magnificent structure, and the structure is still there. The structural elements. There's a few pieces that have been cut out or altered, but 95% of the original structure of this barn, structural pieces, I don't mean the sheeting or weatherboards, but the frame is here. That's very important. So when I used the word before, purlin, this is a structural element called a purlin. It supports the rafters between the peak and the plate. They run this way, and the purlin comes in. So this is one hewn piece, the whole length of the barn. The plate, one hewn piece, a bigger hewn piece, the whole length of the barn. And then they're supported on these braces. I can't think of the word for it right now. There's a word for everything in architecture. That's a much better shot because you can see that the rafters are logs. You can see how they're supported on the purlins, and you can see all the bracing of the framework.
How long would those logs be that are holding up the roof?
Excuse me?
On that last shot, on that last, how long are those logs that are holding up the roof?
I would say they're probably about 18 to 20 feet long. They're all there. I mean, I didn't even see one that had been replaced, and that's remarkable in a structure this old that, you know, wouldn't have had a bad leak and rotted out a few rafters. But don't, as I say, these are out of sequence. One feature that I looked for when I first looked in this house in the 1970s was a brick basement floor, because I had seen a basically pattern in a log building in Tonawanda called, that's been restored as the Long Homestead. In the basement of that building, they had this same pattern, kind of like a herringbone pattern of bricks. They're not there now because they put in the concrete floor when they restored it. They didn't think that was anything worth saving, I guess. Well, this brick floor exists in a part of the original house. The back of the house, I have a picture of the Evans house from the back that would be remarkably similar to this. I couldn't find it. Okay. I guess what I want to do is take questions, or maybe we're out of time, but I don't know how to proceed. What?
John, are there any working barns in the area? When we first came to Clarence, we had a lot of cows, but I haven't seen any lately. So I wonder if there are any existing barns in the area that are in use.
There probably are a few. There isn't. You can't have a dairy farm. It's too complex. There are too many regulations that have to follow. It's not economically possible for the.
There is one dairy barn that's right on the border of Clarence and Newstead. The DeWittco family does run a dairy there.
Oh, that's great. So they have all the stainless steel equipment and.
Yes.
Yes.
And the Wildmans and the Snyders had farms on Hunt's Corner Road, which is just down from Salt Road, the dairy farm.
That's wonderful, because although Clarence used to be an agricultural community, and now is a former agricultural community, in the north of Clarence, there still are some very productive farms.
What was the original roofing material on the barn? What was it? Slate?
No, it wasn't slate. It would have been just shingles,
Oh, okay.
homemade shingles.
Was everything joined with pegs?
Excuse me?
Was it peg?
Yes, all those joints are mortise and tenon, and we don't say peg, we say pin. Pin with a wooden tree nail.
Okay.
But yes, they are. It's a magnificent structure.
John, if I may add to your presentation, I grew up in Pennsylvania, and my great-grandfather had a farm with a barn like that on it. And I got to experience that when I was a kid, helping with the farm work. The barn had a track across the center of it that they used to pull the hay out from the wagons. And then the track would take it over to one of the mows, and you pulled this trip line, and it was like a giant ice tongs. When you
Yeah,
pulled the
you're
trip
right.
line, the hay would all
Yeah.
dump into the
That,
mow.
that's the hay fork. Yeah, that was a great improvement over the pitchfork. When they could bring the hay wagon in, put that fork down as deep as they possibly could, and actually, the horses were the horse cart. The horses would pull the rope, and the fork would come up with, it looked like half of the wagon of hay, and then they would use either that track or a pulley system like they have on ships, block and tackle, to locate the fork, and then they pull a lanyard and it opens and the hay falls. That was a labor saving device invented in the 1840s.
Another interesting feature this barn had was that on the one end, it had what they called a spring house. You know, this barn was built, I wouldn't call it a bank, it was more like a hillside.
Yeah.
And they had some natural spring water that they captured and piped into the spring house, where there was a cut stone tank that they'd set cans of milk in, and the water would run through and keep it cool all the time.
Yeah, that was something, and I think that this farm site was chosen for the creek to at least have continuous flowing water, which was probably potable at the time that they built the farm, but certainly not now.
When you showed the picture of the stone building at the corner of Strickler and Main, that's where I started school in 1928.
Wow, that's wonderful. Yes, that. Now, of course, nearby to this was the good church and cemetery, which is presided over by Bishop Lapp. It was very close to him. Now, in the Historical Society, we have the entrance door to the good church that has long since been taken down. I never saw it, but it was probably a smaller version of that school building at what was
No, it was
Strickland.
larger than that,
Oh,
and it
wow.
was taken down in 1935.
Thank you.
I happen to be a Mennonite, and I'm connected with that cemetery
Oh, wonderful.
and the church.
Question on the architecture of that cantilever when it comes across. How would they know how far to build that cantilever out without making the whole structure tip over? You know, they're putting.
Sure, it's probably just hidden miss like the medieval Gothic cathedrals. They learned it by mistakes. They knew that this was going to hold. And yeah, the cantilever is a nice feature, and you find it on because every Frank Lloyd Wright building that was his delight.
I just wanted to let everyone know I'm Linda Mosher, and this last year we did do a barn survey of 100 historic barns in Clarence, which was funded in part by New York State and in part by our town. And we're going to have a grand unveiling of that next spring for Historic Preservation Month, but if anyone's interested, you can see Jonathan, and we have a copy at the town planning office. So we've continued your work with making sure that we inventory and survey what we have before it's gone.
Well, that's great. I'll be looking forward to seeing that.
Are there any other questions? John, I want to thank you for Seaton, I'd like to introduce Carol Conwell, who will just speak about the future of the Lath Barn. And I'm sure John will be interested in knowing that there's a group that really is working hard to try to preserve the barn for generations to come. Historic Preservation Commission. She's also a longtime Clarence Ferencian and does much for people around town. Carol Conwell.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for coming, everybody. We had a handout for you that explains everything we've done. And on the orange slip is a timeline of everything that we've done this year for you all to review. So you know what the Clarencetown Clarencetown Heritage is all about. When I met with Mr. Conlon and Dr. Halleck at the farmstead in December, Mr. Conlon made a comment, the serenity of the property. I mean, you go back there and it's lost in time. It's a beautiful place. So we've been working at saving this since this past April when we received an email about Barn Vista. So after reviewing the orange sheet, what we're doing right now is we're incorporating. And to do that as a 501c3, we need to raise $4,000 to incorporate. Once we are incorporated, we'll be able to begin a full-fledged fundraising campaign. And we're starting tonight with calendars that Sarah photographed from the barn as a desk calendar. Then it is our hope that we can persuade the town to donate to the purchase of the property. Then once the property is purchased, we're going to start the landmarking process. Then we will bring in Floyd and Elbert. They have come and looked at the property, and to stabilize the barn, they will have to do a study which will cost about $16,000 to see what we need to do. You can go into the barn, but to use it as a venue for weddings or tours, it's not, I would not want anybody in there, any great amount of people. So that needs to be taken care of. So once we get the barn stabilized, then we can use it for venue purposes. Then regarding the Northwoods development, it is my hope to be able to meet with the developer and somehow persuade him to philanthropically donate the building lots that border the farmstead as a memorial park, and to also, persuade him, to enlighten him how it would enrich his development. And then we'll have more fundraising and grant writing. And then we will also, clear the property of the vegetation to see what we have there, the creeks that run through, and how to keep its natural beauty. Like when you drive down the driveway there, the roadway, you've got the milkweed and the vegetation, and that I'd like to see kept, because that keeps to the beauty of what it is. As for what we could do with the farmstead, we have ideas of barn weddings, celebration events, art shows, concert, barn tours. The barn could be used for, architectural tours for the universities, for even the children in school, and even all of us. When Mr. Conlon was speaking of the architecture, when you go in there, it's simply magnificent. I've got pictures in the back, how the pegs and how they number them with Roman numerals so they would know where to fit them. It's kind of like Tinker Toys. When Jerry Sense and Gwen Howard were there looking at the barn from Floyd and Albert, listening to Gwen talk to Jerry how they would have to model it to figure out how to stabilize it. It's just so simply wonderful and grand. I mean, we need to keep this. We need to save it. And then with the creeks, we have the 2 creeks that come in, and we could see how if to put them into like a nature reserve, if the nature reserve would benefit us to a point where it wouldn't hinder us. So we want to do whatever we can to preserve it, but yet make it sustainable, how we can generate funds to keep it as a site to come and to enjoy. Create nature walks, butterfly gardens. You know, the dragonflies were there when Sarah and I were there. They were all over the place. She'd never seen such dragonflies so big. And I mean, it's beautiful. And then for Christmas, Linda, as a girl, was in a nativity scene, and she found the photo. So to have an enactment of a nativity scene there in the ground level would be nice. And then holiday lights on the barn. And then for the house, we could create a village, like a Christmas village, like in the Spores Hotel in the Hollow. Years ago, that was a Christmas store. So, and then have harvest dinners in the barn. And partner with the Historical Society to see if there's any of their treasures that could complement the house so that, you know, it would be another venue to share their treasures for everyone. And, you know, and then work with, you know, our artist preservations. Artists I have found are some of are very much preservationists in their own right. So I hope you will read the literature, the handouts. There's information in the back on the barn about our cultural heritage program that we've put before the planning board to introduce a cultural heritage into the master plan. And if you could like to help us, we welcome you with open arms. And if you know anybody that loves barns and wants to donate to make this all happen, to make it a reality, it would be greatly appreciated. And I thank you for your time coming tonight, and for Mr. Collin coming. And this is Well, I would like to set a meeting up for January. I haven't figured out a date yet, so, but if you want to be involved, there's a little slip or there's sign-up sheets in the back, so just, you know, give me your name, phone number, email, and we'll get in touch with you. Thank you. Yes?
Cheryl, the lots that you want donated, or you'd like to see donated, where do they fall along the black lines?
Well, there's the development there. It would be to the north and then around to the east. See, when you go up the driveway, they're even okay. A couple of houses have been moved to the over here, but they have a road. The development, they've got a road that comes out to Griner here. If you look at the site plan. Now, they have houses around here. Now, Jonathan told me that from the tip of the barn here to the house right here will be 132 feet. So it's going to be, so if we were able to persuade Northwoods to donate these lots here and create more of a park setting, and it would enhance their development for their families. And then around here, there's more space here on the farmstead, but just to protect all the greenery. When you go back there and you look back and you see that vast farmland that someday will have houses, it's just like, oh my God. You know, it's like, oh. But, you know, whatever we can do, you know, the thing is I don't even know if the developer would even consider selling, you know, the whole parcel, because this is the last remaining farmstead in the westernmost part of Clarence. I mean, we lost Lock Lee about 30 years ago, the dairy farm on Griner. So there's really nothing left. Everything in, you know, on the westernmost part of Clarence is being developed. So, you know, Jonathan, probably in planning there, the map has probably been altered since the map that's with the handout, because they did move a couple of the building lots. But they're going to be coming off of Roll Road, because the property goes to Roll Road, because that's where they have the sewers, because there's no sewers on Griner. Because I always thought, oh, I got time, we got time. Well, no more. And then I thought, oh, they're coming in off a road. And that's how they're going to do it. So they're going to come in, but then they come out onto Griner, as you'll see on the thing. So, I mean, it could be, when you look at it, when you're going up the driveway, that road that's going to be coming out is not going to be that far. But if there was a road, that would be okay, as long as we don't have houses. But I'm not asking for much. But you know, when the spring comes, whoever wants to come back there, you know, we'll take you back and show you around. But in September, a group of us had gone and cleaned up the vegetation from the barn, because the vines were crawling up on the barn, and there's pictures there. Tom and Vic Miller were very diligent about killing the vine on the silo. I mean, they were huge. And Dr. Halleck every year climbs up that silo and puts the American flag. And he took it down this year with Vic and Nancy Miller watching him. But he climbs up. I mean, you wouldn't get me doing that. But I'd have the fire company come and put it up for me. But he climbs up there, and he loves the barn, and he wants to see it kept. Is a historic landmark. And yes, Mr. Weiss.
Yeah, I've listened to Tom here, and I certainly think that John's presentation was terrific. I think what you've accomplished is amazing. But I'm a realist. My father always said, if you trap in one hand and you wish in the other, which one fills up first? Now you've got Mr. Samato is going to have to give you well over $1 million worth of lots. You've also got to get a tremendous amount of dollars, $400,000, $500,000 from the town to buy it and do what you have to do. Okay? I don't see anybody here from the town. Okay? I don't see anybody here from the planning board. What I see here are people my age and older, and to raise that kind of money is going to be very difficult. Okay? If it was for a fire hall in this town, you'd get it because people wouldn't get elected unless the firemen okay it. Okay? If it was for the kids for $5 million for the football field, you'd get that. But this is going to be a real difficult push, because you're not only going to need to buy it, you've got a lot of work there. I know Halleck. Halleck, I know, he used to work for me in one of my medical companies. He's done a great job, but there still has to be a lot done.
We can do it, Joe.
There's one thing. I didn't say you couldn't do it, but you've got the solution in this room for this, okay? You have a clock here that is locked up most of the time. Nobody gets to see it. They pass by it. You've got another $20,000 in the cabinet. That clock has been valued at $1 million. Okay? You have $1 million. Now, you sell that clock, which has no relationship to the town except for a gift. You sell, now this is a little thinking out of the box here. You sell that clock. Now, you've got the land, you've got the money for everything you need to do. You can go out, you can get the beekeeper to work there, you can get the people with the cattle, whatever you want, and have your own thing and control it. Okay? Once you keep going outside, getting donations, and this is going to take forever, the thing could foreclose on you, but you've got the answer sitting in this room. And if you sold the clock, again, which was just a gift, it has nothing to do. John, I agree, this thing is a living, breathing thing, architecturally, historically, sociologically, agriculturally. This thing has it, I agree. And I think it could be tremendous. Versus something that nobody sees except for this little group. That's, again, do we take a little bit of...
Okay, I guess I'll give Linda the last word.
Okay.
Okay, Okay, my
Thank you,
last
Joe.
word is, and Carol and I have a difference of opinion on this, is I love in democracy, we can do that. I personally think we should go the route of Hull House or Gray Cliff and form a private corporation and not involve the town at all.
I agree, you're right on.
Not involved,
Stay out of
this
the
is a
politics.
national treasure. This is a regional tourist attraction.
Right.
The house and barn together, the whole farmstead is important to our heritage. We are on the edge of getting a lot of heritage tourists. We're right near Niagara Falls. There's no reason why this couldn't be developed as a separate foundation. Forget the town has dilly-dallied around with this for 30-some years. They don't have the vision, they don't have the leadership, and I would worry about it being in their hands. To me, just do it as a private foundation, raise the funds. They did it at Gray Cliff, they're doing it at Central Terminal. They've done it with Hull House, and Hull House to me is not near the property that this one is. And look at how successful they've been. As I've said before, this is Clarence. We can do better than Lancaster.
We can do it, we can do it. Hope everyone is excited about it. One last word, I get that. I was there over the summer on a warm summer night, and all the barn swallows were flying in and out, and the bees were pollinating, and it was just, it's its own environmental ecosystem, this property. And hopefully we'll all get to enjoy it for many years to come. Thank you for coming tonight, and we'll see you at our next program.